BBC iPlayer.
Now on BBC One, the Tea Time News with Clive, Myrie.
A powerful earthquake hits Japan, destroying buildings and triggering tsunami warnings. Tremors were felt hundreds of miles away. Thousands have fled their homes, spending the night in shelters. We'll have the very latest live from Japan. Also on the programme, migrant boat crossings in the Channel dropped by almost a third, but the figures are still some of the highest on record. The Defence Secretary says Britain won't hesitate to act against rebels in Yemen, targeting ships in the Red Sea.
Double four for a semi-final spot. There is no...
And 16-year-old Luke Littler keeps breaking records, reaching the semi-finals of the World Darts Championships. Hello there. A strong earthquake has struck central Japan, bringing down buildings and power lines. One person is known to have died, and several others are believed trapped beneath the rubble. The epicenter of the 7.6 magnitude quake was in the province of Noto, with the tremors felt as far away as the capital, Tokyo. Tens of thousands of people were told to head to higher ground, and many are having to spend the night in emergency shelters. A major tsunami warning has now been downgraded. Suranjana Tiwari has the very latest from Japan.
This footage from inside someone's home captures the moment the powerful earthquake struck. More than 140 kilometres from the epicenter, this video was taken by English teacher Barney Davis.
It just kept going. It was really long. And like the fridge door was opening and shutting. Pictures were going all over the place. Everything fell off the shelves. It was pretty dramatic.
Barney and his family went to the local evacuation centre until he was told it was safe to return home. But then...
Literally just as we're talking, my phone's given us an alert there's been another little earthquake up north again. So the whole evening they've been aftershocks.
And further north, some staff at this news network took cover, while others wanted to cover the story. The 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck just after 4 in the afternoon local time. It was caught on camera in this supermarket. There was chaos and confusion. Tsunami warnings were issued, then downgraded on the Ishikawa coastline. And people were told to head to higher ground.
I would like to ask all residents to continue to pay close attention to the occurrence of this strong earthquake. If you are in a region where a tsunami is expected, please evacuate as soon as possible.
Despite the damage to roads and buildings, this earthquake is not as severe as 2011, when a magnitude 9 quake triggered a tsunami, leading to a nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima power plant. This time, all nuclear facilities are currently unaffected. But following the earthquake, a huge fire broke out in one of the affected areas, and thousands are now spending the night outside in below zero temperatures, fearful of going back into their homes as aftershocks continue to hit.
Saranjana, dawn is about to break where you are. What's the very latest?
Clive, I'm in Nagano, which is a popular tourist area. It's a very mountainous region of Japan, and it is one of the neighboring prefectures of Toyama, where the tsunami warning was. That's one of the prefectures where the tsunami warning was given. Authorities have now downgraded the warning of a large tsunami and have said that the danger of a tsunami has largely passed. But many places are still without power. Hundreds of thousands of homes are still without power. And in some areas, it's near freezing overnight. Of course, now the damage will be assessed. And it's only when day breaks on Tuesday morning that we will fully understand the damage. Much of the response is being hampered by roadblocks. Roads have been blocked because they've been damaged. And of course, Japan has a vast transport network which has been affected by the power cut. So authorities now saying that they will only know what has really happened, what the real damage, when day breaks, and also there may be further tremors.
Indeed. Okay, Suranjana Tiwari, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. The number of migrants crossing the Channel fell by over a third in 2023 compared with the year before. More than 29,000 people made the journey, and migration is likely to be one of the key issues in the general election expected this year. Well, Mark Easton is here with more analysis. Mark.
Yeah, Clive, thank you. And as you say, with a general election looming, the government wants to start the new year with evidence that the Prime Minister's two big promises on immigration are being delivered. Promise number one, stop the boats. Well, no, they haven't stopped. But the Home Office claims its plan is working. The number known to have crossed the Channel in 2023 was down around a third from 2022. Still, almost 30,000 individuals arrived on the Kent coast, the second highest figure ever. But officials point to three key deals which they claim are helping turn the tide. A deal with France, improving security on the coast around Calais. A deal with Turkey to disrupt smuggler supply chains. And a deal with Albania to return failed asylum seekers. Of course, the deal the government regards as the game changer is with Rwanda, but that plan was ruled unlawful. Now, almost everyone who arrived in small boats last year has claimed asylum, which brings us to the Prime Minister's second big promise on immigration, to clear the asylum backlog. We'll have to wait until tomorrow for the official numbers, but we expect the Prime Minister to claim job done. Number 10 says the promise only relates to what it calls the legacy backlog, people stuck in the system for more than 18 months. And this is what we think the picture looked like 3 months ago. The legacy backlog in the blue here, you can see that shrinking. But the backlog of new claims, the so-called flow cases, well, that still numbers 100,000 people, around that. There will be claims, I think, of creative accounting, with thousands of those legacy cases simply withdrawn and thousands more excluded as complex. So, yes, an election is looming, and the arguments over promises kept or broken will only intensify. Clive.
Indeed. Okay, Mark, thank you. Mark Easton, our home editor there. Israel says the war in Gaza, which has reduced much of the territory to rubble, could go on for many months, but it signalled a shift in tactics by withdrawing some forces to focus on more targeted operations against Hamas. An official says this will allow some reservists to return to civilian life, shoring up Israel's war-battered economy and also freeing up military units in case of a wider conflict in the north. From Jerusalem, here's Shaima Khalil.
The sound of gunfire and airstrikes, ushering in the new year for the people of Gaza. As they continue to flee further south, seeking the ever-shrinking spots of safety. For many families, it's an arduous and an all too familiar journey.
There's no safe place left in Gaza. We used to live in Gaza City, then we had to move to central Gaza and from there Khan Yunis. Right now we're outside Khan Yunis, but there's still no safe place.
In central Gaza, the intense bombardment shows no sign of easing. In this building in Deir el-Balah, people use their bare hands and whatever equipment they can find to pull out casualties from the rubble. This was meant to be one of the safer areas for people who needed to evacuate other parts of the center.
The UN has yet again warned of the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza. It says teams on the ground are facing restrictions in different areas. Israel says it's not limiting aid. But with the continuing fighting across the Gaza Strip, delivering aid to those who need it the most has become a dangerous and a complex process.
Israel's war in Gaza has come at a very heavy price. These were the words of the Prime Minister a few days ago. As the number of soldiers killed in battle now nears 200. Israel's military says it's now withdrawing some combat troops and switching to more targeted operations, but the aim remains the same, to dismantle Hamas and bring back the hostages. And this war looks set to last well into the new year. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Jerusalem.
The Israeli Supreme Court in the last hour has decided to annul a bill which was central to the Netanyahu government's controversial judicial reforms. The legislation sparked months of mass protests in Israel last year. Critics say the changes would weaken the independence of the courts and pave the way for authoritarian rule. The Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, says British forces are ready to act against Houthi rebels who are targeting cargo ships in the Red Sea. The Yemen-based militants have declared their support for Hamas and have launched more than 100 drone and missile attacks against ships travelling to Israel. Well, Frank Gardner's here with me. What is the Defence Secretary contemplating doing?
Well, I think at its minimum, the direct action means shooting down these Houthi drones and missiles. But that's very expensive because it costs roughly 100 times more to fire off, say, a Sea Viper missile from a Royal Navy Type 45 destroyer than it does the Houthis to fire one of their fairly cheap drones, of which they've got a lot. So at its maximum, what it means is targeting the actual missile launch sites in Yemen. And the West, i.e. the US and Britain, have slightly talked themselves into a corner here because the Houthis could call their bluff. The message coming from the US and Britain is stop it or else. And if the Houthis carry on, then if they don't do anything, they're going to look weak. If they do attack those missile sites, there is a risk of escalating tensions and warfare in the Middle East and possibly even dragging Iran into a direct confrontation with the US. An Iranian destroyer entered the Red Sea a few hours ago. So there is that risk. Everyone's hoping to talk the Houthis out of it without having to actually attack their missile sites.
OK. Frank, thank you. Frank Gardner, our security correspondent. Police have named a 16-year-old boy stabbed to death in North London last night. Harry Pittman died in the Primrose Hill area of Camden. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Officers are appealing for information. A mother accused of murdering two of her children in America has appeared in court for extradition proceedings after being arrested in the UK. 35-year-old Kimberly Singler was detained on Saturday in central London. American police say her 9-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son were found dead at a home in Colorado last month, along with her 11-year-old daughter, who was injured. Vladimir Putin has pledged to intensify attacks on Ukraine following days of aerial bombardments from both sides in the war. Speaking during a visit to a military hospital in Moscow, he said Russia wanted to end the conflict, but only on its own terms. He also claimed Ukraine's Western supporters were the biggest obstacle to ending the conflict. The copyrights of several famous films, books, music and cartoon characters, including Mickey and Minnie Mouse, runs out today. That means Disney, for instance, will no longer hold exclusive rights over the earliest versions of the two children's favourites. Noah Nanji has that story.
It was the animation that launched the House of Mouse. 1928's short film Steamboat Willie featured non-speaking versions of Mickey and Minnie. These early images are now available to the public in the US to use as they like.
This is a deeply symbolic and long-awaited moment because of Disney's perceived role and the extension of the copyright term, which prevented these properties from going into the public domain for an additional 20 years.
But there are still limits on how you can use these images.
What I cannot do is start making merchandise in the same kind of products that Disney sells. And so I'm selling T-shirts with Mickey and Minnie on it, and someone seeing those T-shirts thinks erroneously that they're getting a Disney product when they're not. That's what trademark stops.
Other famous properties now available to the public include the silent film The Circus by Charlie Chaplin, Let's Do It by Cole Porter, and the novels Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence and Orlando by Virginia Woolf.
Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, we were friends for many years.
But there are few successful examples of beloved old property being used for new original content. Winnie the Pooh, which is also owned by Disney, was turned into an R-rated horror flick, Blood and Honey, after entering the public domain in 2022. The movie was a far cry from the childhood book. And with that in mind, it will be in Disney's interest to keep tight control over how their most iconic characters are used. Noor Nanji, BBC News.
The teenage darts sensation from Warrington, Luke Littler, has reached the semi-finals of the PDC World Championships. Now, the 16-year-old beat Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan in the quarters 5-1. He's already the youngest player to win a match at a World Championships, and he'll now face the former champion, Rob Cross. Here's Matt Graveling.
Ladies and gentlemen, Luke Littler!
In 3 weeks, Luke Littler turned 17. In 3 days, he could be world champion.
Littler's been averaging hundreds pretty much every game. I think he's got a bit too much for Dolan.
He's a youngster, he's not scared of anything. He's going to go there, he's going to smash it out the park.
The teenager captivating the world of darts. Today, faced a quarter-final. In his way, Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan. Nicknamed the history maker, Dolan faced a teenager making his own history.
Here he goes.
And the youngest player ever to win a match at this tournament soon took control of this one.
Takes the first set.
Control became domination. His 3-dart average rose to 121, and with it, he swept the second set.
2-0 to the teenager.
Dolan couldn't get into the match. The third and fourth set went to Littler.
Oh, Luke Littler.
And despite Dolan pulling one back, there was only ever one winner.
There is no sign of this teenage dream coming to an end.
Unbelievable. Obviously, I know I've got the ability to go all the way, but if it's not to be tomorrow night, then it's not to be. But whatever Luke Littler turns up, then it is what it is.
While Littler has burst onto the scene, his talents were honed from a young age. This footage posted by his mum on social media shows a young Luke the Nuke was throwing at just 18 months old. So the fairy tale continues, and for the lad from Warrington who celebrates every victory with his favourite fast food, he's now just 2 doner kebabs away from one of the biggest achievements the world of darts has ever seen. Matt Graveling, BBC News.
Thankfully, darts is played indoors because all this rain is very annoying. But it's going to be changing soon, I hope, Chris?
Yeah, in the slightly longer term. But before we get there, we've got heavy rain to come, Clive. Yeah, today, big contrast in fortunes from the sunshine that we had in Scotland and here in northern England. Flamborough Head looking lovely with the North Sea lapping up against the shores. Seas are looking rather more agitated down towards Cornwall. The next weather system is already winging its way in. Here it is on the satellite picture. And it's this little bump of cloud that we're keeping a very close eye on, because this is going to be a rapidly developing area of low pressure that's not just going to be bringing wet weather our way tonight and tomorrow, but also some very strong winds could bring some disruption. Now, overnight tonight, a band of rain pushes its way northwards and eastwards, cold enough for a bit of snow over the highest northern hills of both England and into parts of Scotland as well, but ultimately will be turning milder. Into tomorrow's forecast, well, here comes that next zone of rain extending in across England and Wales. Could be up to 50 millimetres of rain over the next 24 to 36 hours, enough to cause some further localised flooding issues. And then we've got a swathe of strong winds that could see gusts reaching 60 or even 70 miles an hour around the Bristol Channel. Very windy as well for the Northern Isles of Scotland. And this next area of low pressure is one of those lows that's going to keep developing and strengthening as it crosses Wales and England. And so we'll probably get another zone of very strong winds during tomorrow evening time, affecting parts of Lincolnshire and East Anglia as well. Might even get gusts here of around 50 or 60 miles an hour. So there is the risk of seeing some disruption from that system, whether from the winds or the heavy rain. On into Wednesday's forecast, it's a day of sunshine and heavy showers. Some longer spells of rain could cause 1 or 2 issues across the northeast of Scotland, where it will continue to be windy. Temperatures, for the most part, on the mild side, still reaching double figures. However, we are going to see a change in the weather pattern later on this week and into the weekend. High pressure takes over. With that, there'll be lots more dry weather and sunshine, but it's going to get a lot colder as well. Clive.
All right, Chris, thank you. Chris Fawkes there. That's it. I'll be back with the late news around 10:30, but now on BBC One. Time for the news where you are. Bye for now.
Hello and a happy new year. I'm Assad Ahmed. A boy stabbed and killed on New Year's Eve.